We're just about at the end of the year, and that means it's time for another retrospective from the channel. But not in terms of stories we've covered, because there's already a 10 roundup for the year for that particular purpose, but rather in terms of how this channel, Transport Evolved, has been run as a business. We have always tried to be transparent as possible when it comes to how this company is run, and this year has been no exception. Although the amount of excess nonsense that we've all had to deal with as a team has increased, we still feel it's important to share with you some of the ways in which the money from many of you who support the channel has been spent. As is usually the case, though, we don't ever discuss actual dollars and dimes because, well, that's not fair on us or indeed team members. So, as in previous years, I'm going to give you rough estimates loosely based on percentages. Also, I should probably note that these figures aren't official and they are non-audited. Last year, for example, when we did this, we said that we were doing slightly better than we were. When we calculated things like power used by the company, when we did our taxes, we actually found out we'd turned a small loss. And frankly, I expect the same to be true this year. But because I want to focus on the positives, let's just deal with unmentionables, because it is worth noting that time spent dealing with unsavoury comments has gone up exponentially this year. For example, the amount of racist abuse aimed towards Kate for being biracial has more than doubled, as has the homophobia and transphobia aimed at us both and the rest of the team. That sadly isn't uncommon among other creators online though, as certain well-known billionaires and free speech absolutists have made it trendy to be hateful. We've also seen an increase in anti-Semitism and threats against team members. We've been told that, trigger warning, the concentration camps were too good for you, and one of our regular trolls actually used the word HEIL in reference to Mr. Elon Musk earlier this week. I don't want to dwell on this because there's a lot to be said for not giving those unsavoury voices a platform. However, YouTube does seem to punish people who block comments and turn off comments on specific videos, so it is in our interest, however hard it is to deal with, to actually let those comments exist. When someone goes over the line and makes direct threats against our lives or threatens to dox us, which is publishing our personal details or addresses online, then we have actual grounds to get law enforcement involved. Until then, ignore the children. Don't encourage them. The knock-on effect of all of that is mental anguish on the part of members of the team, and believe me, it really does get to us at times. Especially me, because I deal with the majority of the comments. But enough about people who are so inadequate they have to tell everyone else they suck, and instead let's talk about the amazing things made possible this year by the amazing people who've supported us. Many of you. Let's start with YouTube. YouTube's subscriber count has sadly remained pretty stagnant this year, due in large parts to YouTube's algorithm not recommending our videos. We've heard from so many people this year who say that they were unsubscribed without their consent by YouTube from our channel, and we even met a couple of them at Fully Charged Live and other events during the year. And to be fair, we've all seen it with our own personal YouTube accounts as well. YouTube unsubscribing us from our own channel or various other channels we follow. Right now, YouTube denies that this is happening, but it seems endemic on the platform these days, as does YouTube failing to notify people we've published a video. Again, if we had $1 for every time someone welcomed us back to YouTube with open arms and said, "Wow, this is your first video in ages," I'd be really, really rich. We've had multiple people tell us that we're not producing videos anymore, or in fact that they're glad we've started suddenly producing videos again, which is honestly extremely frustrating. Many people seem to think that the answer lies in the fact that people don't understand how the homepage in YouTube works, which is true, but that doesn't help us get in front of other people's eyeballs. This year, we've basically added about 450 subscribers to the channel, which is terrible. And our ad revenue has dropped by more than a third year on year, and in fact more than 45% when compared to the figures we were receiving in 2021. And again, we are not alone in this. Other YouTube content creators that I know have reported similar drops in revenue, and some people have fared far, far worse than we have. The silver lining for us, though, is our other income from other sources has grown and helped us immensely. Patreon support this year alone has grown by about 36%, which mercifully has helped eliminate the majority of the loss in income from YouTube. It's not eliminated all of it, but it's eliminated enough that we're actually able to tread water and keep things afloat. If you're one of the people who stepped in and made a donation this year, thank you, because without you, well, we would be in a very, very deep, dark place. Sadly, a dip in Patreon support towards the end of the year, which is traditional, means that we're no longer making payroll from Patreon alone, but luckily YouTube ad revenue has crept up in the last few months and helped fill the gap in. Like I say, ticking along. As in previous years, our income from our third-party white label work, there's a YouTube channel based in New Zealand that we make white label content for, with me in front of the camera, but slightly different backgrounds, it's remained pretty nice and steady, and while the income from that has not gone up with inflation, it's definitely another welcome string to our bow. However, while 5 years ago our income from Patreon, YouTube and consulting was all pulling fairly equally, this year Patreon has done the heavy lifting, accounting for about 2/3 of our annual income, with YouTube ad revenue, third-party production work, i.e. making videos for other local businesses and ads and features you don't get to see on our channel, and the occasional bit of consulting pulled on that other third. This year, we actually did a fair bit of different consulting. We did some individual coaching sessions. You can still buy yours today for $300 and get a full, comprehensive car or vehicle consultation services from myself and Kate Walton Elliott, which will help you pick a transportation solution that's right for you. And we've also done a little in-person consulting to businesses too. Appearances at events also attracted a modest income, which added to the aforementioned 1/3 of our income. And I'm going to throw merch into that group too, the majority of which came from sales of our extremely popular Halloween t-shirt. If you are wanting more t-shirts, because we all are, you'll be pleased to know that Erin is busy cooking up multiple new designs for the merch store, and our grand master plan is for us to release a new design every month throughout next year. Maybe we'll do something special at the end of it. We're not quite ready with the ironing out of details to share with you yet, but watch this space. Toward the end of this year, I also did my first industry insider consulting work through a blind consulting agency service. I've never used one before, but I didn't know who the client was and they didn't know who I was, but I was able to bring in a sizable amount of money for a sensible amount of my time, which again went straight into that 1/3 of our income. Don't ask me who it was, because I genuinely do not know, and also I signed a non-disclosure agreement, but I don't know who it was who wanted my opinions. It was a voice-only session in which I was asked my opinions on things in the industry, and frankly, I would like myself and Kate Walton Elliott to do more of that next year. Why? It's good money, and it would allow us to focus on topics and stories we'd like to cover more without worrying about ad revenue, as well as, of course, free us up for not having to worry so much about making ends meet. The same would be true if we could increase our monthly Patreon support a little bit more, but more on that later. Now you have a good idea of where our income came from, let's talk about where it went. I hope it's no surprise that of our total income this year, the majority, about 57%, went directly out to paying everyone's salaries and associated benefits at the channel. This year we had 2 full-time members of staff, not including myself, Erin and Em, and 2 part-time members of staff, Kate and Moss. You probably haven't met Moss, as they work on a very casual basis and don't normally come on camera, but they're our resident makeup guru, and you may have met them at Fully Charged Live in San Diego in 2021, as they were responsible for running our merch store. They also helped us this year with some boring admin stuff that I was drowning under. All of our employees at the company get the option to have health insurance, and 2 opted to do that. And this year, we've covered 60% of their healthcare costs because we honestly believe a healthy, happy team is better than someone worrying about if they can afford to go to the doctors or not. We've also started a reimbursement program this year to allow team members to expense their home offices to the company, because running a home office and remote working is fine, but it adds extra cost to the employees. The same goes to the big lump sum of running payroll. And if you're curious about my own personal pay, I want to state here that I am a company owner and I pay myself a dividend whenever we have spare cash, which hasn't been all that often this year. I'd like to change that next year, but for now, employee health, happiness, and payroll are much more important. Suffice to say that in previous years, I'm glad I don't pay myself using payroll because I'm well below the federal minimum wage, not for 2023, but probably about 1983. We're left with 1/3 of our expenses, and that is split pretty evenly between daily running costs for the channel and covering things like travel. This year, mercifully, our travel budget has been incredibly small, thanks in part to me getting airline status late last year with Delta, which has actually helped lower our baggage costs and occasionally gave me an upgraded seat. Side note, while most of our flights are paid for when we're invited somewhere by an automaker, the actual cost of getting our equipment, the camera bags and everything else, is usually on our dime. And in past years, we have spent hundreds, thousands in fact, of dollars getting camera gear into planes. But this year, we learned some tips, tricks and hacks to lower our total costs substantially. So, yay! It's called press passes. We also made fewer trips this year that required out-of-pocket expensing. We drove more than fly, and the occasional trips we did make that we had to fly on — I went to Washington, D.C. for a conference back in November, and of course Em and I flew to San Diego to film with Aptera — were made a lot easier thanks to airline miles and credit card bonus points. The latter flights to San Diego was completely paid for with the points from our corporate American Express card that I had used throughout the year to purchase other things that we needed. Aside from the cost to power the studio, which of course comes out of my home electricity bill and was the reason we ended up turning a loss last year, the rest of our operating costs come from repairs to equipment, consumables, software, and the occasional upgrade. Last year, we were able to buy some significant upgrades to camera equipment and gear, mostly because the equipment we were using decided to start misbehaving. No other reason. This year, though, luckily we didn't have a whole lot of expense when it came to upgrades, and our computer equipment and camera equipment generally behaved itself. Our biggest spend was the computer we bought for Em, a brand new editing machine, which took the video workflow from having a machine that took 29 hours to export a 30-minute car review to doing it in under 15 minutes. Everyone at T is now running on some form of Apple Mac based on Apple Silicon, except me. I'm the only person who is still rocking an old, unreliable and temperamental machine. Next year, frankly, we desperately need to buy a new editing machine for me, but the cost to do that is phenomenally prohibitive right now based on our current income and commitments. But I'm hoping we can raise the funds to buy a new Mac Studio at some point, but until then, I'm just going to deal with the random crashes and late nights that my 2017 iMac Pro sometimes subjects me to. Normally I just break out the air cannon and get rid of the dust, and then it's fine. In addition to editing machines, our servers required a little bit of hard drive upgrades this year, and our backup server completely gave up the ghost, which does mean we don't have an update backup system right now. I know it's scary, but again, I just got a quote for $10,000 to replace the broken backup server with a more modern machine, and right now that's not something we can entertain. We do regularly get people ask us why we don't just use the cloud, because our internet connection is very slow, that's why, and or why we keep so much footage, nearly 0.5 petabyte, locally. The answer to that second question is because automakers don't keep older footage on their servers. This week I had to send Kate Walton-Elliott some footage that had been deleted from Chevrolet's server years ago. And in fact, some of our own in-house footage that makes 10 and other videos is more engaging, so where possible, it stays local. Kate Wharton-Elliott did get a new hard drive set up this year, thank you to the Patreon supporters, and that means she has a large enough array at her satellite studio in Washington State to keep things ticking over. She's working on a backup solution and has drives and a single board computer to make that happen, but at the moment it was estimating months to finish running its first run, so that's still a work in progress. We actually, believe it or not, live about 120 miles apart, so me or her sneaker-netting footage to each other every week is, frankly, a little impractical. That said, next year we're looking at expanding our servers again because we only have 20% available space left on our main server here, and that's not good. But we have to buy hard drives in multiples of 5 because of the way that ZFS works, and I'll let you do the maths on buying 5 server-grade 20TB hard drives at a time. And no, I would love to, but we can't just shuck drives for less. Shucked drives from consumer portable drives are fine for a home media server, but not for a business, which relies on those drives every single day and requires 100% reliability. Also, while we're still in our third of expenses, are things like software, which actually costs a lot. In recent years, software providers have shifted from pay-to-own to subscription models, and while where possible we do try and buy the software we use, some of it is subscription-based. Adobe, for example, which is the company that produces Photoshop and all of its sibling apps for animation that Erin uses, costs an incredible amount of money per month just for a small company. And no, we can't use individual licenses because Adobe has tightened up that kind of fight against that kind of thing quite recently. After all of that, we have insurance. Transport Evolved, like any business, pays liability insurance, and all of our gear needs to be insured too. Worldwide, because we travel worldwide, which is more expensive. Because we are classified as a media company and people could potentially try to sue us, please don't sue us, we have to be protected against that kind of thing. And because it's a media company, the insurance company, well, they make a lot of money out of us. It's very, very expensive. Like last month, the insurance just for our liability that I paid for the whole year was equal to the amount of money we paid last year insuring our physical production equipment. Yes, those are separate insurances, but one is to insure us against being sued for something we said in a video, and the other one is to protect the many thousands of dollars of production equipment we have from being a total loss. Of course, our insurance also covers things like ensuring that when we are public and filming, we are covered if someone trips over something of ours or, doesn't see the giant camera rig on the back of our F-150 Lightning when we're filming chase shots. Our day-to-day operational costs, other than the aforementioned electricity bill though, have thankfully dropped this year a lot. It's about 80% of what it was this time last year. But trying to keep up with inflation and trying to keep everyone paid has meant that, well, I don't think we're going to end this year much better than last. Although, fingers crossed, we will be in the positive. Which brings us to what's ahead for next year. I would absolutely love to bring a little more money in, and honestly, I'd love to be able to pay myself a living wage. I'm lucky. Right now, my wife, who does have a well-paying job, does most of the heavy lifting for our family income, and I would love to be able to bring in a steady income every month to help her with that, especially as neither of us are getting any younger and retirement is looming on the horizon. At this point, I should acknowledge that someone somewhere will, of course, shout at me about getting a proper job, and no doubt the rest of my team too, and say that we're just begging and being lazy. But the reality is that making videos to the standard that we try to takes time. It takes experience. It takes a reasonable amount of equipment. Yes, regarding software, we could go Linux overnight and stop paying a dime for our software, but part of the reason that we do use Macs at this company is that we, specifically I, have spent years and years amassing experience, software, and techniques that have allowed me, and now the rest of the team, to speed up our production process. We would all have to go back to square one and start from zero if we switched, and that would mean fewer videos and lower income. I'm not asking for sympathy, and I'm not begging, but if you are someone who is willing and able, now would be a great time to consider supporting the channel from $1 a month by going over to patreon.com/transportevolved. If we could double the number of people supporting us at the entry level, and remember, $1 today is worth far less than it was 5 years ago, we'd be doing so much better financially, and it would mean that we'd actually have spare cash to do more as a channel. Frankly, and Kate, I'm sure, doesn't want me to talk about this too much, but I know that she doesn't really enjoy her other job and she would love to join us full time. But right now we just can't afford to pay her a living wage. Imagine what having her full time on this team would be like. Imagine the in-depth videos we'd be able to put together. Because honestly, my brain is too scatterbrained for half of the videos that Kate makes. A lot of people ask why we don't make paid for content and why we don't do advertising. I've already talked about the advertising before. We don't want to sully our editorial impartiality. As for paid for content, the answer is that we always believe that information should be free for everyone. And if we are truly serious about helping affect a change as big as switching the world's energy away from fossil fuels and towards a more equitable and sustainable one that everyone can take part in, everyone needs access to the information we're producing. Unfortunately, though, just like NPR, we can only do that when our viewers, supporters, and fans step up. My health this year, thankfully, has been mercifully better than it was in the last few years. But it is unfortunately starting to look as if I may need to take some time off next year, or the years after, for health reasons. And I know that Kate Walton Elliott is going to need to too, so shoring up our support and increasing our viewer base are top priorities. As for the fun stuff, the content, we are planning some epic videos, some of which we've already started filming, as well as some smaller, more modest productions. We also want to start working with local companies and bringing in some money from outside of the YouTube world, but 10 celebrates its 500th episode this coming year. And it's been an amazing journey thus far, and I hope that you will be around as we continue to push through into 2024, because I think it's going to be a year that we'll need to be around for. Together, I think we can make something amazing. So thank you for watching, happy holidays, and of course, Happy New Year! Thanks for joining me today, and if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them below in our Discord chat room, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling on your screen right now. They are some of the more than 1,500 people who help fund this channel through Patreon and YouTube. They help cover our bills, pay our team, and make sure that we can be 100% independent. If you'd like to join them, and of course see your name listed here, just follow the links below. There are a range of different tiers you can sign up for, from as little as just $1 a month, or if you pay yearly, just under $11 a year. A huge welcome to our newest supporters, Nathan Plowman, Hanno, Bender, Estelle, and Sarah J. Goodfriend. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations. And we even have a good old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at. The address is linked to below. And if you're in need of some swag, you should also check out our swag store in the down below too. We've got some great content coming up, so make sure you're subscribed on PeerTube or YouTube, and we'll see you soon. Don't forget, we make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you want more, the mighty algorithm thinks you'll like this video, but we think that this one is also worth a look. See you soon, and as always, keep evolving.